Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths Subscriber Craft Review. We're finally back reviewing stuff, and just a quick notice for those just joining us, for the new people who maybe have not seen one of these videos before. Wow, that was weird, we just went underwater. The submissions for this series are closed. Please do not ask me to review your craft, because I will not do it. I am going to finish reviewing the list I have. It's taken me ages to get as far as I have, and then I will be done with this series. There's just too many people who want me to review their craft, and I can't make everyone happy, so instead, once this is done, we're going to do something else, and it's going to be really nice and cool, I promise. And if it isn't, well, I'll look really silly. So in any case, we're reviewing a thing today, and that thing is The Reclaimer's Gaze by ModdedTech. Thank you, ModdedTech, for being so patient. This thing has been gathering dust on the list for quite some time. So what is this thing? This is a front-sider, and there's two things you're immediately going to notice about this thing. One is that in profile, in just general shape of the thing, it looks a lot like a Warhammer 40k Imperial vehicle. So something like a Rhino or a Land Raider, like that style of thing, Lehman Russ. Like if you ignore the fact it doesn't have one big turret on it. Yes, I know Warhammer 40k lore. Like that is information I happen to have in my brain. And the other thing you will notice is that it is beneath the ocean, and it is, I assure you, it is not meant to do that. It is a hovercraft. It is supposed to fly above the ocean. And the problem that, the reason for that is not ModdedTech's fault. It's not anyone's fault, really. It's just due to the fact that this is an older design and the game has been updated multiple times since it was first submitted. In particular, the AI and propulsion update of a few months ago slightly balked the underside jets on this thing. So if we go here, and let's go, that's not it. There we go. Nearly hit the wrong button. So it's got these jets that before the update would be controlling its altitude. What the? No, that's the roller. My bad. These ones. So you'll notice that the preset on these things is set to pitcher, which means that these things are responding to pitch commands and not push commands. Which is needed now for a PID to recognize them as altitude controlling jets. So I do not fix the things sent to me. That is not what I'm here for. We're here just to review them. And often with something like this, what I would do is I would contact the creator of the craft and say, hey, there's a huge problem with this thing. Do you want to fix it before I review it? But this literally takes 5 seconds to fix, and so I have done that. No need to thank me. It only took 5 seconds out of my day. So here is the version of the thing that I have actually reviewed and combat tested and all that stuff. And as you can see, it flies quite nicely so long as you stay in 2014 physics. Because if you go to 2019 physics, which is going to happen any day now, I promise, you'll notice the propulsion force factor is only about 60%, which means that, once again, the thing does not have enough VUMA to fly, and it sinks, which is no good, so we're going to stick it back in 2014 physics, like so, and we're going to get it out of the water. So, what is this thing? This is a hovercraft front-sider, so it's a thing that is controlled by ACPs. You'll notice there's no AI routines on it at all. To continuously point at an enemy craft and shoot it to pieces with big guns, which I approve of because big guns are fun and hilarious, at least in video games. In real life, they're terrifying, and I don't want them anywhere near my house. So, what has it got? It's got big guns. So up here, it's got a Hesh disruptor shell combo in 2 twin turrets. So this one over here fires Hesh, so let's go here. Here's our Hesh shell, pretty box standard. Has aged reasonably well through the APS update. And, excuse me, had coffee before. Gonna burp. And here's a disruptor shell. which isn't great these days, but it still seems to do something at the very least. Against small craft, that admittedly not great EMP jolt actually does quite a bit. It tends to fry things quite nicely. And in the front here, you've got 225mm hollow point high explosive, which again, this used to be a lot better than it is now, just with the APS tweaks and all that jazz. 225mm, about 1000 thump damage, armor pierce of 5.5. That's not very good, that does almost nothing. Explosive damage of 731, also not great. But in its day, this would have been a lot more scary because hollow point thump damage just had consistent armor penetration value, and it had a lot more kinetic damage in it. And the HE is just kind of for flavor, I guess. So this would take about 5 seconds to change into something a little bit more oomphy, so that's alright. It's also got a pretty strong LAM system, as you could probably guess from the stylishly stacked LAMS nodes on the front here. So, let's see, sustained damage per second is about 2400 with 10 AP, so that's a lot, and with the amount of nodes it has, that is a plenty. So if I do this, and spawn in the Plunderer, because Plunderers are great for this, and of course it's spawned in behind. So I've set it to godly simply so I don't have to repair it. Boom, boom, boom. From the side, it can't really do anything because they're all pointing forward. But LAMs these days can actually zap small APS shells out of the air. It's quite hilarious. And an entire Plunderer volley is not easy to destroy with LAMs. It's got two reasonably beefy ones in here. So you see here, it's got a lot of pumps, it's got decent storage, and not huge either, so frequency doubler, I don't see any, let's see here. Yes, it's got two of these puppies. That's actually not bad. Like, I keep failing to make stuff that works this well when it comes to LAMs. All my LAMs end up being huge. So yeah, so decent LAM system, it does the job. It is reasonably slow, so you'll see in the conveniently recently updated UI again, it's scuttling backwards at about 22, 23 meters per second, so that LAMs is a very good feature, because otherwise it would get zapped a lot by slow big shells, like these ones. Okay, so Plunderer can go take a nap now, and it's also got torpedoes, so submarines are not entirely safe from it. They are down here, and they're explodey, and it's all very well. Works quite nicely. It has a lot of them, actually. I count 16. Yeah, conveniently stacked like this. They fire. Wrong weapon? What are you talking about? There we go. Okay, they have a firing delay. And then they go off, and on their merry way onto their destiny, and that's fun and cool and death to anything in the water. And also has a reasonable repair rate, this thing, so oftentimes, quite a few craft that I've reviewed, and I still kind of see this here, there, and everywhere, is that a common, I guess you could call it a rookie error, it's certainly one that I made back in the day, is sticking too many repair bots on something, and just relying on repair bots for the survivability of a craft as opposed to actually designing the craft well. This thing does not fall into that trap. It has a decent repair rate, something that is not ridiculous but still kind of does the job well. So if I blow up something right here, 50,000, and let's blow up where Rambot is. Cool. And let's stop Rambot from repairing, because that'll be silly. And you'll notice that underneath, I believe that's, yeah, the repair bots pop out from underneath, which isn't necessarily a good idea, because if you box them in entirely, they just repair telekinetically from wherever they are. So, just gonna wait gently for this one to make his way. Looking at the repair bots makes you realize, actually, just how massive craft and From the Depths actually are, because I think the rotors on that thing are, let's see... Yeah, the top rotor on this little guy is about 1 meter long, so this is a big craft. You notice it's repairing now. Quite nicely. A few repair bots here and there, not excessive, just blocks going ding ding ding. Which also means that it's not eating through resources incredibly fast. You see there, that's actually reasonable for... At least I would consider it reasonable. It's not draining like tens of resources per second just repairing. Because that eats all your money. And you need your money. Like even now with the campaign with you getting way more resources than before, money's still a good thing to have and not waste for no reason. So, that's a point in its favor. And it's got decent all-round armor. It's not amazingly well armored, but it's got layered metal on the front here mixed with stone and surge protectors, which is a good thing. Because that kind of makes it a little bit harder to kill this thing with EMP. These pointy LAMS bits aren't especially well armored. LAMS nodes aren't particularly strong. They're not really well armored. Let's go here. How well armored? 310, not great. And they are surrounded by metal though, which is quite nice. And on the side, it has continuous stacked armor, which at the very least means this thing is pretty resistant to just regular explosions. So 1, 2, 3, stack of metal on the side. On the front, where is it at its thickest? So this line right here is quite well armored indeed, because it's just multiple stacked layers of what you would call it, of metal and stone. Right. So you see here, it kind of varies a little bit, but on this line straight there, it's like about 50 AC. This line here, just 40, 43. 67 there, not sure where that's aiming. I saw 88 for a second there. Oh yeah, there's a heavy armor block just here. Just kind of adding a little bit of armor stack into the things in front of it. And so yeah, it's decent armor. It's not amazing, but it does the job for the most part. Now, what else? Speaking of armor, you will notice in here this thing carries a lot of ammo. Like, according to this super handy comma that has now been added to the dev test. Did I mention I was in dev test? I'm going to be in dev test until what is in dev test goes to stable. How many times can I say dev test in a row? Dev test, dev test, dev test. So it's got fully enclosed heavy armor ammo compartment, which is ding ding ding, you win a all-American cherry pie and a fond yep, I'm gonna say it, a fun slap on the bum for that, because I've seen multiple times people kind of making the mistake of not fully enfolding vital components in heavy armor when they use heavy armor, which is a problem because heavy armor, as I've mentioned many times before, is so strong that it tends to outlast anything else near it. So if, for example, that you put heavy armor all the way around this, but skimped on the bottom, say just putting metal instead, that metal would get destroyed long before the other heavy armor blocks do, which renders the heavy armor useless, because then it's just big, expensive, and heavy, and just can't do its job because of what's being contained in here gets destroyed before it anyway. You fully enclose it in heavy armor, you don't have that problem, because it means no matter what, the area that's getting the most fire, that'll die first, and that will take a while. So fully enclosed heavy armor ammo compartment. I have never seen this thing get ammo wrecked. I honestly haven't. I've tested it multiple times against my craft, against enemy craft. Holds up really well, and this thing almost always falls out of the sky, sinks, and drowns before the ammo compartments get compromised, which is a testament to, yeah, just how secure they are, really. Because often with front-siders, the ammo is a real weak point, because they're so compact, and this thing is very compact. Just the explodey bits go up in smoke, and the thing just gets blown to pieces. So yeah, that's a point in its favor right there. The turrets. It has 2 turrets here, aforementioned Hesh Disruptor combo. It handles being, well, for one thing, it can aim straight up, and so they are on thing 1. You can see they're aiming all the way up, because they have, darn it. So, they have a 2-meter tall AA mantlet, so this thing doesn't aim very well at things below the deck line, but if you, for instance, spawn in something like this, that flies right over the top of it. Actually, let's spawn in another one just in case. How's my computer doing? She's been temperamental lately. Yeah, I think the Felix is on... Yeah, no. We need something better than that. Planes. Hakes. So it's probably... Actually, it might very well do hit these things because... Yep. So those shells are fast enough to clip things that fly in straight lines. And, wow, that was dumb. So you'll notice that these guys can aim almost straight up. And because they turn all the way around, they don't have the issue that frontsiders often have, in which they are helpless against anything that gets behind them. So, very good move there. Good design choice to have turrets on the thing. So, and talked about the shells already. Yeah, that's basically it. That is briefly everything that's good about this. This is a competently built craft, by the way. We need to say that straight up front, is that in its day, this thing would have been really damn scary. Back when LAMs were more powerful and the Disruptor Hash combo was just the ultimate meta. Never noticed the bearing rangefinders there. And yeah, so this thing, honestly, the only problems with this thing really are just with... I don't know, there's a few design things and also the fact that updates have occasionally slapped it around a little bit. The jet fix was one thing. That wasn't a huge deal because that's very, very easy to fix. Something easy and from the depths? My goodness, the pigs... Are pigs flying outside? I can't tell, it's too dark. Also, my curtains are closed. I would never see flying pigs. And there are things that could be changed about this thing, and one of them is that you will notice on the torpedoes there's a lot of fragmentation warheads at a reasonably narrow angle, especially this one. I would replace most, if not all of these, with either explosive or EMP, largely because they seem to do better on torpedoes, honestly. You can have like one frag warhead, one or two maybe, set to a reasonably narrow angle, like 60 degrees. 10 is probably too much. Fragments don't seem to do a lot at 10 degrees or lower. Just to like take advantage of any holes blown in the hull of craft you're shooting at, but more explodey, more zappy, less splinter. What the hell did I just say there? There's also the thing is that there's no staggered fire on these guys, so if I fire these things off now, jeez, that jet's constantly firing sounds really weird. So if we do this, we make a submarine like this. How far away is that thing? So those torpedoes are probably not gonna make it because they also don't have much fuel. They only have 20 seconds worth of fuel. And so actually swapping out a few of those frag warheads for fuel tanks might be a very good idea. And that is a lot of missiles. I forgot that Typhoon has that many. Let's do this. Whoa, that was a lot of damage. Let's try that again. Yep, so these guys have run out of fuel. That is definitely a point against it. The fact that, geez, when they go off, it looks impressive at the very least. Also, I think they threw one of the torpedoes off course. So, while the next torpedo barrage comes in, there it comes, we can talk about why you kind of need staggered fire on high explosive torpedoes, and missiles for that matter, is because when they hit something, they throw each other off. Gosh dang it. Can you please? Boom. Okay. While we wait for the third torpedo volley to come in, we can talk about... basically, when torpedoes explode, they tend to bounce each other around a lot, so if you don't want that to happen... oh, large rudders on this thing, cool. So you'll notice now that, I think, how many was that? It looks like, wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those torpedoes have been flung wildly, of course, because their fellows exploded right next to them. That is a huge waste, so best to have staggered fire on those things, just so they can actually all do the job they're supposed to do, which is kill things that are in the water. Much like sharks. Actually, yeah, like, I believe torpedoes are occasionally? I think they're called fish in, like, real-life navies. Just because, like, incoming fish. Mind your toes, they'll get nibbled. I mentioned this thing was compact. It is compact, and you will notice that there is little to no actual spaced armor in here. There are cavities filled with components, like here is a laser warner, here is a munition warner that has been got. Let's just repair this thing so we can freaking see everything. Out of place. That's new. That's a thing that's happened in the update that happened just today. Man, I love Dev Test. So anyway, spaced armor. It has none. What spaces it has are filled with important stuff that you don't actually want destroyed. So here's a classic example. So here we have a tiny amount of spaced armor here, but that's filled with surge protectors. Once these small slopes get blown off, you've got a straight line for a heat or hash shell to start spraying fragments into these forward guns. In fact, when this thing really comes under fire from something that spits out a load of heat and hash, these guns die very quickly. Like, they just components come flying out the bottom of this. And same here, really. It's like, yeah, this is all pretty stacked armor. This is actually a Daddy Blade turret, which is before the modern thing of just having an AI routine which is point at and maintain distance. This is one of the ways to do it. It's basically the turret points at the thing, and the ACB sets it to spin either one way or the other to maintain distance. Quite clever, really. Like, whoever first came up with that is a genius and deserves a chocolate chip cookie. And on the sides is probably the most egregious offense, so from here we have lovely stacked armor, cross-hatched. By the way, like, don't talk to me about cross-hatched, because I've talked about it before, and if you want to do it, great, but if you... There's a gap missing here. Hello? Hello? That's really weird, and very useless. That is... like... all the non-benefits of spaced armor, and not enough armor stacking from enough angles, so interesting. I did not know that. I didn't notice that at all. I wonder if that's deliberate. It might be deliberate. So what we have here is a very tiny space in which, say a hash shell hits here, it will spawn in a whole bunch of 15 AP fragments into this tiny space, which will wreck these stone beams here, and just make a larger air gap for more hash fragments to spawn in. Or, if a heat shell hits exactly along this line, so here, goes through here, heat charge goes through here, shape charge, and it will go straight in here and fry the batteries. So, this is actually worse than I thought. This is like the negative side of both inadequate spaced armor and inadequate stacked armor. So yeah, that's an issue. Like, this... No wonder this thing gets shredded from the sides. I always thought that was a little bit weird. So yeah, the armor design... I mentioned before, it's okay, not great. Also has, yeah, no spaced armor on the rear. If this thing gets a heat shell up the booty, it is, these are going to explode promptly. decent against explosions, but yeah, like any kind of shape charge, which is something like you always have to worry about. There's so many damn things in this game which use heat shells, myself included. Yes, I'm in the game and I use heat shelves. Shelves. Heat shelves. Heated shelves, new from IKEA. Okay, so this thing is also prone to flipping once it gets damaged. So if I trot out the handy explosion tool and if I blow up, I think, yeah, just to blow up the sides a little bit. Yeah, where's the explosion thingy? 6, go here, 50, and let's up to 70. Please don't break my game. Wonder, did that do it? Okay, that did not do it. Would this do it? That did it! So yeah, once this thing loses a lot of mass on the side of it, you got the usual PID problem in that it tends to flip over. This is actually very similar to something the Kobold used to do, is just when it loses too much mass on one side, it forgets how to control itself and just kind of barrel rolls straight into the ocean. So yeah, that is actually one of the reasons why, for the longest time, I wasn't very fond of PIDs and preferred to use ACBs, because this doesn't happen when you use ACBs to control, especially for roll control on a craft. The ACBs are kind of too stupid to fool. They just, they don't try to do anything fancy, it's just stimulus, response, and they fix it immediately. They also bounce around and look like crap, but that's beside the point. Did these things turn green? Were they always green? Or am I just blind? I think I'm just blind. I think that's very pale green. Paint 15. Let's paint 15. Oh, that's paint 15. That's dark green. I didn't notice that either. We're all learning things together. Yeah. It's also quite fuel hungry, so you will see in combat, like, well, basically, look at the engine in here, and we can talk about two things at once. Injector engines, and I learned this embarrassingly recently, you really need, in order for them to properly cool down, you need 2 exhausts per cylinder. This whole setup only has 1 per cylinder, so this engine is prone to overheating, which is probably why the thing is set to run basically with just fuel engines charging electric engines. Because, like, you can see by the ACBs here, enemy within 0 to 5,000 meters will set fuel engine battery timing to 100%. So these things are just here to charge the batteries, and it's electric engines that actually power the whole craft. Now, I suspect that the reason for that is because this particular engine design overheats too easily. And the way to fix that is just have more exhausts, basically, 2 per cylinder. And this kind of engine also eats fuel like crazy. Whoa, the UI is different now. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Current fuel use, stable power at 100%. 31.48 power per fuel. That's very terrible. That is completely terrible, actually. And lots of cylinders. All that stuff. Wow, like, I really... Maybe I shouldn't have reviewed this in dev test. Maybe I should have been a sensible human being. Too late now! So yeah, very fuel hungry. It's also not fast. Like I mentioned before, this thing only scuttles forwards and backwards with its internal turreted daddy blades. Here's one, by the way. So here is more of them. They kind of just spin in there. This isn't really spin block clipping, by the way, because daddy blades can do this anyway, so I don't consider this very exploity. I know some people do, but back in the day, this was the only way to get something like going forward and backward reliably without sticking nice big fragile helicopter blades on the outside, like the Kobold. Here's daddy blade poles inside here. Same story. And just because the daddy blades are all so compact and small and squished in there, this thing only moves back and forth about 22 to 23 meters per second, which isn't very fast. And a really serious cram barrage could just blast through the lambs and gut this whole thing. Haven't seen that yet, but let's try it. Let's see what happens when we chuck a bulwark at you, my darling. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling. Is my computer melting yet? Okay, you just shot yourself, girl. That isn't great. Lambs are really good at sniping APS shells right now. So you see there, they get most of them, and then that one doesn't do it. Although the bulwark is currently losing. Wait for it, can you? Yep. So, real monster cram barrage, the kind I like, can do a number on this thing because the lambs isn't quite enough to stop it, and the thing isn't fast enough to dodge it, which is why a lot of the most scary frontsiders in the game tend to move quite erratically. So things like the trebuchet, the kobold, the singularity in particular. Ask me about the most wanted for that. I dare you. I dare you. It's coming along, okay? I just need to build the friggin' thing that can actually do it. But, where was I? Okay. And I mentioned before that these turrets can aim straight up, and that's cool. They still fire too slowly, and they have the wrong shell type to be proper anti-air. So this thing is okay against planes, but if it gets swarmed by them, particularly small, fast things that move erratically, it's in trouble. Also because it doesn't have lasers, it doesn't have like secondary guns or missiles or anything like that. This thing is a ship killer and submarine killer, I suppose. Not good against, not great against aircraft. There is also something worth mentioning is that this thing does not like being shot from underneath, which is fair enough. Most things in this game do not. This is a 1 meter thick... Hang on, where is it? Where is it? Ah, here. This is a 1 meter thick weak spot right under here that will destroy the exhausts to the engines, and kind of, it's a shortcut straight into the engine compartment. So it's not really an issue because it's just how the craft is designed. It's not meant to get shot at from underneath. But if, for instance, a timed fuse cram explodes under here, it's gonna blow the engine exhaust off. It's also gonna take out the torpedoes, and it's just going to really ruin this thing's life. So yeah, that doesn't want to get shot in the underbelly. The turrets are also worth mentioning. They're not armored, so generally speaking, so if we go on here, so you see here, they do not have any internal armor. This is a big whoopsie. In my book, I always say, like, it really, really does pay to have internal armor. It's free spaced armor, basically, and it just makes guns, be they APS or cram, so much more survivable. It's not even funny. It means it's harder for the turret to get completely decapitated. It's harder, like, I don't know, it's just generally so much more tough. And that's been proven in, like, tournaments, like, well, the one tournament I've entered, my entry is pretty bad otherwise, but, like, the turrets generally survive quite a long time, and that's just because they have armor surrounding them. And also, just, yeah, it's just a really good idea. And on top, the armor isn't great either. It's clearly, I'm guessing ModdedTech went for the approach that small turrets are harder to hit, except these aren't that small. It's only got like one layer of metal around the whole thing, and it's got the mantlets are exposed. And mantlets are pretty tough, 2000 health, 40 armor, but you still don't want them where they can get shot at. They're tough enough to take something of a beating, but they're too important to be shot at, really. You really want to cover them up. And sticking an active radar sensor right in the middle here, it just makes a nice glaring weak spot right into the center of the turret here. So probably more armor, or even heavy armor, really. Well, maybe not heavy armor, not on these turrets. Or maybe, who knows? There's also a nice weak point on the barrel right here, the bore evacuator. 830, 1 meter block. And actually it's not that much of a problem because regular barrels here, heavy barrels here. That's probably more the sensible way to do it, except bore evacuators, really, if you're going to use them, you want to hide them right in front of the mantlet behind layers of armor, because it is only a single block, and it is not nearly as tough as a heavy barrel. So this is 940, that's 830. Actually, it's not that much of a difference, really. So yeah, turrets, they do tend to get disabled, and they do tend to get their barrels sheared off as well. What else? Oh yeah. Autoloader only Tetris. This hurt my feelings. Slightly. Like, back in the day, arguably, this was more acceptable. These days, not so much, simply because if you just attach, say, one or two... If you attach clips properly to autoloaders, they essentially can replace them, and they're cheaper and lighter, and they hold more shells, and just, it's generally better to do that. It is interesting Tetris, though, with these 3 meter autoloaders. But really, like, this is not great Tetris, and you don't want to use just autoloaders, because these things are still quite a bit more expensive than ammo clips. So 330 versus 220. Weight is 120 versus 30. So particularly to get this thing ready for the 2019 physics update, whenever the hell that happens, swapping out a lot of those autoloaders for clips might actually be a very good idea. Those turrets will be a lot lighter as a result. What else? Yeah, so I mentioned before AI mantlets, this thing aims up really well, but usual story with AI mantlets, anything that gets close, like here, pretend there's something coming in like here, anything below the height of the upper deck, these turrets cannot shoot at. And that's a shame, because that's kind of precisely when you'd want them to be shooting at things, because like most frontsiders, this thing does not like things getting up close in its face. So yeah, like, I don't know, like, I guess sticking dedicated AA guns on this thing, new simple weapons would be great for that, and just swapping out the mantlet in there for... Would there be room for that? Oh, hell yeah, there'd be room for that. For just... What's it? Just the 3 meter tall elevation mantlet might be a good idea. You'll just have to really set the firing restrictions and the... whatchamacallit? The failsafes, so they don't shoot the hull by mistake. And... yeah, mentioned that. That's basically it, really. This is overall quite a competent design. Like, I like it. It's partially because, like, I have a soft spot for any kind of craft which is... let's get rid of this scuffed paint there. I have a soft spot for any kind of design that is radically different from my own style of building. Just like, I don't know, I kind of like it. I like seeing variety in what people send me, and definitely this, that almost looks like a face, I just realized. It just looks like a dour face, and I'm going, what are we looking at? And, yeah, so this is a solid craft. It just needs, I guess, like, really just minor tweaks here and there in order to make it ready for the new, improved 2019 From the Depths. And so, good job, ModdedTech. So, thank you, ModdedTech, for submitting this craft, being patient. Reviews finally here. And thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like, it really helps. Thank you to all my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you next time. And From the Depths, subscriber craft review. Farewell. Forgot to mention the price of this thing. It's 325,288 materials. Bye.